So how are you liking Fanfest so far? Woo! So, my name is CCP Fear, and this is my good friend Nathan Richardson, if you know him. I've been a game designer at CCP for 7 years now, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about improving EVE's user experience. And today I'm a member of a team called Team Pony Express. And Team Pony Express, as the sort of name suggests, is all about player experience. So we're focusing on making sure that the features we're working on are great, are easy to use, easy to understand. But we're not really focused on new features. We're not making new things and shiny things. But we're much rather focused on things that have been sort of orphaned, or old features, things you maybe use every day. And it's also about sort of messaging inside the company, where we want to sort of get the message across about what user experience is to you and to the CCP. And as you can see, Pony Express was about delivering mail across the Great Plains. And we can sort of reference that a little bit as well. So why is user experience and player experience important for EVE? Well, it's 10 years old now. You know, a lot of things have changed in the last 10 years. And some of the sort of things that we sort of take for granted aren't maybe what you guys are experiencing in anywhere else. So maybe it's also an afterthought, like, you know, well, you know, we can just make that feedback a little better. Maybe the button is a little easier to read, or things like that. And that may be an afterthought, but we want to make that sort of the center of attention. So I'm going to go a little bit into what user experience is. And it sort of sits at the center of what we call design, business, and technology. And you can see various things in here, like, you know, there's visual design, there's UI, there's prototyping, as you heard in the talk before. And all these sort of come together to form user experience. And sort of the key things that I would like you to sort of understand when we go through this is that, especially in this book, it's an awesome read, focus on outcomes and not output. Output is like a feature. This is the amount of work I did today. While the outcome is like the experience, what you expect for it to do is what we're trying to get. Continuous discovery, well, that's like talking to you here at Fanfest. We learn by doing that. It's like, oh, well, we're making this feature A. Do you guys like it? No, we don't like it. OK, well, we'll do something else. Plan B. And making over analysis, that's basically prototypes. We had a huge talk about that earlier. And we're much more focused on prototypes, user testing, and things like that now at CCP, because we see the importance of doing that. But the very complex diagram I showed before, we can actually see very easily here. Technology, business, user needs. And the most important thing is what you need, what you want to achieve with the feature. That's blank. And if we look at sort of history of games a little bit, this has sort of evolved as the technology has evolved. You know, this is one of the first MMOs, basically, the MUD, Baldur's Battle. And the RPG moved into Baldur's Gate. And now it's like, you know, heavy UI, lots of text, lots of things going on. But now it's like, you know, there's sprites, there's magic things going on. That's very cool. You're sort of more immersed into the experience. Well, in the MUD, you're sort of like, yeah, well, you know, I can see it. Oh, yeah. Walking around, yeah, OK, turn right. OK, yeah, OK, excellent. And then it's even evolved much further, where the UI is almost not even present anymore. It's about you sort of walking around, just exploring the world. So you're totally immersed into the experience. And it comes down to like what, if you saw the Dust keynote, where Dr. Lecarte was talking about verisimilitude, and it's a hard word to pronounce, verisimilitude. I can't pronounce that. But why is that good for us? It's good. because we can actually like learn and adapt and make great things for you. Because that's the key thing here, you know. And we maybe you know, done some bad things before, but we're on the right track. But I want to go a little bit through what Team Pony Express did in Retribution, which I think was great. And all the things that we both read on the forums, all the sort of post-launch surveys we always do, and the message was clear. It was great, you know, let's more of that. And let me just play this video. It sort of highlights everything that we did. So we did module tooltips. We did the new crosshair. We did the chase camera. And we changed the targets, and there's a little line if you highlight over the module that's activated on the target. It's very subtle. I do not know if you can actually see it. Either way. And it was great. And it was sort of formed a little bit of a package that we thought of sort of the tactical UI. Because we thought, like, you know, this is very sort of stale and hard to sort of sometimes understand what is actually going on. What's the damage coming from? What's going on? And you can see, like, the damage notifications themselves, we improved them to be much easier to read, not to sort of flatten, hard to understand, and skipping most of them as well. And it's great. Do you like this? Excellent. And we did a little bit of sort of corp recruitment flow and improvements. One of the things we've always acknowledged was that, you know, and I think that's sort of maybe an industry thing as well, you know, people who are in corporations are just much happier. They're doing more fun stuff, and, you know, it's not maybe not universal, but it's sort of better. So we took the search tool and we completely redid it, both from a technological and design standpoint. And we realized when we were working on it, it's like, well, it was completely broken and wasn't really resulting in the correct thing. So like the filters and things you were using weren't actually resulting in the right things to be shown to you, which is sort of bad. And then we looked at, like, you know, how is the flow for the user to actually, how do we, you know, go through clicking that thing, finding the right corp, talking to them, and sort of getting into the corp. And we sort of made that a little bit more streamlined. And there was a couple of sort of bugs that we noticed that we wanted to fix. So one of the reasons we did, so we changed it into being that I, as a player, when I want to join a corp, I have to then say, yes, I will accept. So it's like a little extra step, but we think that extra step is actually very important for you to feel in control, rather than you just sort of entering a corp at unknown time. And we did the welcome mail editing, which was something we were like, yeah, I mean, we hear people like that, maybe we should do that, it's great. And the feedback from when you sort of started talking about it was great. Like, people love doing that, so we might even add more. Thanks for that. And it's perfectly simple and easy and fun. But I want to talk a little bit more about Odyssey, and I think that's sort of why everybody's here. And so the things that we looked at going into Odyssey was, we don't really, you know, there's all about this sort of verisimilitude, to feel like you're actually in space. And we sort of looked at just the game and played a little, you know, the game, and sort of, where are we not feeling immersed? Where are we sort of cutting corners by sort of, well, you know, people could just imagine things happening like in the background. Well, one of the things is the transitions. You're moving between states, so to speak. You're moving between systems. You're moving from a station. And we thought that, you know, we can make this better. Currently, it's just like a loading bar. It's like, that's not very gamey. It's not very cool. It's not very Eve. More sort of Windows 3.1 going on. But, so it's old days. It's like one of those, you know, moving Eve into the next decade. So we went ahead and sort of listed up every single sort of transition we could find. Start with that. Okay, here are all the transitions. Big Excel sheet. Zoop. And we sort of started grading them. How many people are, you know, doing this specifically? How many? So, yeah, okay, these are the most people. How ungraceful is it? How, like, detrimental to the experience is it? You know, 1 to 10. Yeah, excellent. And then we just filter, categorize. And top at the list was something that we feel it should be something like this. Who's seen this? You know, and it's like, yeah, he's going into a trap, but that's okay. At least I know, I'm going somewhere, this is really exciting, music, da-da-da. Anyway. But we give you this. And that's great, for, 10 years old, fine. So we thought, okay, let's just, let's do something more like this and not like this. We are, after all, a space game. We're like, science fiction, crazy, 2400th century, right? Somewhere around that. And we're still sort of Bill Gatesing it up. That's the thing now, I'm trademarking it. So we came up with like, how is this going to be great? Let's take that and sort of, so we did some experiments and we sort of drew things on paper and whiteboards and sort of prototype it, like, you sort of click things, you're sort of doing things, and we sort of like, let's give you information. That was the first thing we did. We're going to give you lots of, graphs and text and things like that, and we were like, ugh. And then we talked to the artist, and they were like, no, we don't like that. So they gave us this. Can we maybe pump up the volume a little bit? So that's great. Do you guys like that? Shall we see it again? Yeah, why not? More volume. Well, that's fun. Okay, so it's going to run in the background with no audio for you, just to Watson, don't listen to me, just Watson, it's fine. So, well, this is great. This is not a loading bar. You feel like, you're in space. This is something happening. It's like you're being, you and your little tiny little ship, or not so tiny, you're just being hurled into the next system. And that's something like I couldn't really come up with this. We have artists who do this. This is crazy. I can't really stop looking at it. So anyway, moving on. Well, it's much smoother. It's much more graceful. You're sort of not just losing the, yeah, remember I'm playing a game. That's bad. And if you think about sort of when you're designing an experience, you want them to feel. You want to feel that you're doing the thing that you're doing. That's exactly what verisimilitude is like. You want to feel it's believable that you're actually traveling around in space. And if you bring up a sort of a progress bar, like downloading or things like that, it's like well, I'm going to go get a coffee and yeah, I remember I have to do my taxes and not remembering that you actually are in a spaceship and maybe 100 guys behind you. But this was actually great. This is one of those sort of old things we haven't really touched in, I don't think, ever since we launched. Somebody might have to tell me otherwise, but I don't think so. And just by looking at the code and just exploring what exactly is happening there, we optimized this massively. I'm not going to tell you any numbers yet because I'm going to lie. But we saw just the way we're handling when we sort of tear down the scene. Speaking techno now, we were just doing very ungracefully, one at a time. It's like I take every single one of you individually and take you out of the room and throw you out. Ooh. Well, that's not really good. Did that work? Hello. So instead of doing that, we just take all of you and throw you out at the same time. So think about the amount of effort that the client or the server has to go through just by doing that. So the next thing we looked at. So one of the things we were sort of thinking about, well, we want to be able to sort of interact with the game. Controlling what you're doing is be easy. and you know, responsive and you know, fast and things like that. Well, you know, if you're using this is a very extreme example, you know, like planet. See, you know, the amount of mouse travel you just have to do and visual finding things in this thing is massive. And I find myself always like clicking on the wrong thing, for example, or you know, so there's like, and the options are like, you know, and there's so many options, but and I'm not saying like a contextual right-click menu is bad. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying, when you have so many options in there, then it becomes a detriment to the experience. So we started thinking, well, what can we do? Well, we have a radial menu in the game. Nobody uses it. It doesn't really work. It's on the middle mouse button. It's funny, it's not really a button, it's like a scroll. So can we do something with that? And the first thing we sort of were looking at is like, well, I can't actually left-click on things, and I can't use my mouse, and you know, this thing. I can't actually use my left mouse and just click, 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 nothing's happening. Why is nothing happening? Oh, I'm moving into space now. Okay, why is that happening? Nothing is telling me anything. I'm lost. I'm quitting this game. It's boring. Anyway, we said, well, you know, at least you should be able to click on things, and something should give you something about something. Start with that. Okay, we have the radial menu. Okay, let's sort of take that and maybe make that sort of easy to use. Make it fast. Make it sort of 21st century radial menu. And if you look at around just on video games in general, there's lots of radial menus everywhere now. Even League of Legends now has a radial menu to do like a sort of a order thing going on. So we came up with this. Again, I can't stop looking at videos. Huh? So we sort of took the radial menu apart and said like, well, let's do it from scratch. Let's not even think about taking the radial menu. I must work on my timing. Okay, so we said like, well, you know, let's not do the radial menu, just like take the menu, sort of fix it now, no, let's like build it from scratch. So we actually made a prototype. We made a complete functioning prototype, very basic. It was like you could click on a ship in space, and it would do some preset things. And we sort of just wanted to see like, is it good to click, and how can we get that interaction just going? It was like, okay. And we showed around people at the office, like, how do you like that? And even the most skeptical is like, you know, I remember a meeting in the game design stand-up every morning. It's like, you know, well, we're doing a radial menu. And one of the guys who were not really liking a radial menu was like, no, I never use radial menus. Oh, how horrible. Why are you even thinking about that? Well, you know, let's try it. Like, let's try it. Experiment. Do prototypes. Yeah. Come over. We'll show you. So, you know, we did the prototype. He came over. He's like, oh, this kind of works. Ooh, it's pretty cool. So if we get him to use it, we can get all of you to use it, right? So, technical, you know, things about it. It's super fast. It's very efficient. It's organized in a organized fashion. It has like a primary thing up at 12 o'clock. It has lock target at 6. All the navigation in space is at the 45 degrees angles. Show info is to the left, and then there's like an extra thing going to the right. So what this helps us with is that, you know, instead of having just a right-click menu, we say like, well, we can add options almost endlessly. We just add another section to the left, to the right. Yeah, do that endlessly, and you have what we had before. So we're limited by 14 slots or something. So now we have to really think about like, is this thing, or this option we're presenting to you, is that actually good enough that we put it in there? And then you're actually starting to think like, okay, now I really have to think about how do you access whatever. So that's good. It's good to have so like having little scalability actually helps us here. And usually we're talking about, I must scale to 1 million people. Well, and as you were clapping earlier, now I'm going to talk about that. So it's gesture-based, so you just click and it's done. It's great. Not so finding the right pixel, and it's like, oh yeah. Because like if you want to be, you know, clicking and making an order, like warping two things or targeting things, you want to just do it. It should be acting very quick, not like, oh, I didn't hit it. Oh, I had to do it again. Oh, wait, which middle mouse button? Yes, okay. Doesn't work. And then, if you have a range thing, because you do ranges everywhere, you just drag, zip, and you just drag it back, so you just find the right sweet spot. Let's drag further right there. That's fun. And it's proven, it's academically shown that a small radial menu is much better than a big cascading menu. So, huge paper about that, but just so you're doing this professionally. Okay, so I want to sort of sum this up a little bit, or sort of move into what you might expect sort of the second decade. I'm not saying it's 10 years from now, but it might be much sooner. And we've sort of actively been looking at like what other features are there which just cause pain and sorrow and where I'm sort of like, oh my God, I can't even use it. Oh, why so many buttons? So I want to talk about two things. There are obviously more things we're thinking about, but these are sort of the two things that are sort of more developed in our heads. Big disclaimer, I'm not promising that this will ever hit TQ. Ever. Well, maybe. Bribe me, we'll talk. So skills, skills are probably one of the most important things that you do. Everything's connected to skills. If you don't train skills, you're not really doing anything. And currently, there's a huge list of categories of skills. They're categorized in a very weird fashion. I think we've not really added enough categories. Armor stuff isn't a mechanic. Why is armor just not its own, for example? Why not? We can make categories as we want. It should be easy. No. I'm not going to break how it works. And then the skill queue. The skill queue is great, right? We like to queue things up. It's in a completely different window. You access by pressing a button. And it's sometimes a little bit confusing. And just the connection between things is hard to grasp. Where do I see, okay, I have this ship. Okay, I can, there's so many skills that I fit in. Then I need to fit it with stuff, and there's that, all the skills. And then I'm into bizarro world, and I'm like, oh, I can't even grasp this. So we want to at least try to address that a little bit. And there are many ideas and many things that we could do. One of the things we actually want to hear what you guys have to say about it. But we made a small mock-up to sort of. So why isn't it something like this? Why isn't it just a single window? Why isn't the queue just in its own? Why isn't there just a simple filter you just type something? Why is that not I type for rate of fire? What is that? Oh, this is this skill. Excellent. So just drag things into the skill queue. Why aren't the categories, easily understandable? Why aren't things sorted in a way that's makes sense for actually where you're coming from? Because if I'm looking for armor, I'm not going to go into mechanic. I wouldn't think so, at least. And info. And because finding out what skills are, we thought, it seems more relevant that we move into how do you find all this information? Well, we have show info. It's the most used tool in Eve. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's you're always opening this up. You're information about everything is in this window. It's always the same. It's just a little tool. It's and it throws out all of the attributes. Okay. And some of them are maybe not relevant. Some of them are more important than others. And why can't we just do it like this? There's the skill, requirements, the fitting requirements, and sort of highlights of the attributes. You don't even switch. You don't have to switch any tabs. You just open it. Simple. That's one way to look at it. So information just in general in Eve is hard to find. And we want to sort of try to fix that. So it might just be this, and that might be a really good thing, but it might be so many other things. Everything sort of information. So how do I invent things? See, I'm not even sure I know. We were actually talking about that not too long ago. It's how do I invent? Okay, I need to get the blueprint. I need to get the meta items. I need to get the copy. And we don't really show that anywhere. So you're looking on the internet and finding Google. Yeah, tell me. We should be obviously telling you that stuff, right? Well, come to think of it, yes, we should. Okay, so we will. Okay, so this is sort of come to an end. But so user experience is super important. It's important from like a UI, from flows, from just feeling, being part of the universe. We did great things in Retribution. People like that. It's a cool little list of things that we did. And the great things coming in Odyssey. Transitions, jumping between things. And even further ahead, there are even more greater things. And it's mostly just features that are just sitting there, and nobody's giving them any love, and we should give them love, right? Okay, so I'm just going to allow you to ask questions because I think that's the most important thing here, rather than me babbling about something that I find really interesting. So, questions?
First question is, currently every second window in Eve has its own set of settings. Mm-hmm. It's good to have them somehow interactive, to customize them. However, you need to know exactly where to look and what to look. Is there any possibility to put copy of those settings, functional of course, in the main setting window, beside the graphics, audio, etc.?
Yeah. I don't think there's something against that, like from a technical standpoint, at least that I know of, but in some cases I think it's important that you have access to the settings of a particular window or feature right there, but in some cases where it's just more generalized, should be like in the escape menu. So I think in most cases you would want to at least be able to tweak the things that you're working on right now. But it should be contextual to exactly what it is. So if I'm working in the corp management stuff, then there should be sort of options and things I can tweak there. Does that make sense?
Yes, I understand, but that's why I'm not telling about moving them, but about copying them as secondary control center.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there should be anything against that. No, that'd be great.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Croy from Eve University. One of the first things that we actually teach our students is how to set up their overview. And I got to tell you, the changes that I have seen that you guys have done for this change, it's just amazing. So congratulations, awesome. One of the things that we do is we set up a pod saver tab. And two things come to the mind. Number one, the animation when we actually go through. If you find yourself into a situation where you are basically being killed, you go to the pod saver tab, you start spamming warp away, and you go away.
Yep.
Number one, will the animation affect that in other ways that you'll be killed? And number two, will we have a pod saver tab?
So one, so the animation we're working on now that Siegel talked a little bit about yesterday, we haven't really finalized exactly how it's going to be, but it should be informative enough that you understand that you are in danger user warp out, because we do think like that whole experience, both your ship is dying and your pod is dying, is lackluster and very passive, and you don't get anything from us to tell you, hey dude, warp away. If you're going to do like some specific sort of spam a button to get out, probably not. Right. But I'm always willing to discuss.
Okay.
But I was thinking about actually putting the Eve University's wiki page for setting up the overview, because I think it's like I don't know, a mile long, just to sort of illustrate the point. Like the overview is one of the things that maybe we should fix that as well.
We have some work to do, and thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there. When are you giving the industry, and especially the invention process, some love? Because right now it's an unnecessary click fest.
Yeah.
It might work if you do 5, but think of it doing it in the hundreds and in the thousands.
Yeah. Absolutely. So that's obviously one of those interfaces, where I could have talked a lot more about as well. But I can't really say when, but it's very, very close in our heads.
Right, yeah.
Hi, PM Kem from Goonfleet Scarpa. I'm kind of following up on the first question, maybe a clarification on that. So we have a utility where if you've set up all of your windows and chat channels and everything perfectly on one character, you can then copy it to every other character on every other account on your computer.
Yeah.
Why do we have to have a third-party utility for that? Can you add that feature so with one touch, a human being can make all their accounts look alike?
Absolutely. I think that's great to be able to do that, and I can't promise that we will, but I will definitely just take that on me and talk to someone who actually can make that happen.
That'd be great.
Hi. I'm sure somebody will correct me if I'm wrong here. I haven't done faction warfare yet, but I'm planning on starting. And I believe there isn't a tutorial for it, or for the orbital bombardment stuff that's just come in.
I'm not actually sure. So I'm going to say, like, I do not know. But if there isn't, there should be one. So
Agreed.
I'll note that down and be like, yeah, okay, one of the things to do.
Also, I know it's been asked before, and I think it's been tried before, but I'm going to keep asking until somebody does it. Can we please have bookmarks on the overview?
Ah, that one. Didn't we talk? We talked about that so many times. So I think there was a technical reasons why we tried that. It didn't really seem to work. But it's something you guys really want, right? So I think we'll just have to check again and find another way maybe to do it.
Cool. Just
Sugar Blow Eve University. Great talk. I love seeing all of the UE improvements that you guys have done. It's been amazing. Part of the last question was on bookmarks. With the new radial menu, how do you plan on implementing the massive amount of bookmarks that a single person could have in one system?
Yeah, so the radial menu is obviously not going to accompany, all the bookmarks. So we are going to have to look at how do we do that. Currently, the radial menu is only working on like the brackets in space and the overview and the targets. So we're sort of trying to make that, small increments in how we sort of handle just making sure the radial menu actually works, and then we can sort of adapt it to further things in Eve.
So just clicking in, or right-clicking in space will have the old menu?
Yeah, I mean, we're obviously not removing the radial menu, so you can still obviously just right-click for the bookmarks. But it does bring up a point where we at least have to think about it and consider that. Absolutely.
Well, I have a question about meta levels. I often browse the market window, and it's categorized by alphabetically, so I cannot see if I want the meta 4 module that you have to click with info and click every single one.
Absolutely. I mean, that's just one of the things where, if the information you're looking for and we're sort of listing things based on meta, for example, you should be sorting them by the meta level. Yeah. So I think it's just sort of a logical thing where we actually start looking into like show info and things like that, where this would be like, what are people using, or what do you want from this specific section, and how do you present that in the right way? So that would be one of those things we would absolutely fix.
All right, thank you.
Kura Karnak from Adaron Robotics. Shout out to Eve 303 Denver meetup group. And the quick question, is there a way to split the overview into 2 tabs, to have them open at the same time, or at least have like a division in between? So for example, the top would be all your war targets and the bottom would be all your celestials. Yeah. So you would have quicker access to multiple items at the same time. I mean, I don't want like 4 tabs, just 2 would be enough.
I don't think that's possible now. I would guess that there's lots of sort of technical restraints on that, mostly because, the overview is already sort of a problematic beast. So if you take that and duplicate it, it would probably be causing a lot of just performance hit. So I don't know if we want to go that way rather than sort of take the overview and say, like, how can we present that information in maybe a different way?
Well, or some kind of sorting to where you could sort one below the other. So war targets would stay at the top, but like 5 celestials would be at the bottom no matter what.
Yeah. That might work, but I'm not going to promise anything.
That's not so much a question, more of a statement of a hope. Like the industry, you said that probably gonna get a hobo soon. I hope that the Corp management system roles, titles, And
Well, okay, so
all
you know,
those nightmares that I have about that.
Oh yeah. So well, when we look at sort of the things that are sort of nobody really owns and nobody's really working on, and it's sort of listed up in Excel, it's like there was a huge list of things, and all of these things are in there. But we sort of like, well, everybody's using this, so we sort of, when we sort of listed it up, and like this came on top. So we felt like, well, let's do this first. But then obviously there are other priorities that come in place, so that must obviously change. So we might just not do these and do something completely different.
Because I sort of understand your wish to change the skill because it's such a key component. It's something that we all touch. But I'm sensing a lot of us don't really even, it's not that crucial because it works very well as it is right now. Where there's both industry, trading, corp management is really hampering a lot of enablers and investigators, and it's a huge thing that is actually causing damage, whereas I think skills are nice and it looks well. And
Absolutely.
But isn't really going to change hugely the player experience.
No. So we felt like that skills were very important because it not only touches existing players, but it's also like people coming into the game. So we felt that we're sort of touching two things here. But obviously, these are also very important things as well. But if we then sort of just, in the next coming months, maybe the priorities might change. So this might fall lower, and then that might set up. And that could just be you guys screaming at me. So
I will keep screaming. We'll keep screaming.
I have a follow-up question about the setting up tabs and your chat menus and all chat windows and all that things about switching between characters. Is there any possibility to have that on a server side thing so that if you log on someone else's computer, you don't have to set everything up again or just reinstall the client?
Yeah, I mean, I believe that, you know, if I have for example, an Eve, I want just, because I'm always moving between computers, I'm at work, I'm at home, then I want things to just be exactly the same as they are. So I think it is important, but it's a very sort of slow process because we have to take every single thing individually. So yes, we want to do it, and we will get to it at some point.
Thank you.
Will the radial menu be available for drone control?
Not right now, not in Odyssey, but hopefully soon after. I mean, we want to sort of expand and see like how you guys like it and get your feedback into it, like how does it actually feel to use it, and then expand it into everywhere else.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, when will the fleet list get some love? I mean, like for example, I'd like my FC to be like highlighted, my squad to be like different color, something of that sort, because sometimes just finding yourself in a large fleet is a task in itself.
Exactly. It's nothing that we were looking at right now, but we might be able to do something small, if that helps.
All right.
No more questions? Nobody? Okay.
I was wondering if you were working towards something like an object-oriented interface where if you're interacting with a ship in, you know, looking at it in the market, you can transition to looking at the fittings that you have for that ship. If you're looking at the fittings and you're looking at a module, you can transition right back to the market, that sort of thing, connecting with the things.
Yeah, we're very sort of interested in sort of like how things are, everything, if you think about just on a, how everything is connected and how we present that connectivity, it's somewhat sort of disjointed. And we want to sort of get to a place, I think that's sort of the longer term vision, where you're able to seamlessly go from, you know, the market to the info to the whatever.
To skills.
Yes, exactly. So that's sort of easy transition, how things are connected, and it's easy to understand. So yes, long-term vision though.
Okay, thank you.
I got a couple really quick questions. One of them is a yes or no. Is the system change animation you demonstrated for Stargates the same for caps? Because obviously you're not going to have a loading bar on the caps, I would hope.
So I think it's going to be just on Stargates now. If somebody's from art, they're working on that as well. So we do want to have this a little different for the different things, like, for example, wormhole. But at least for now, it's just this. But we might be able to squeeze more things into Odyssey, depending on time.
Also, the radio buttons have hotkeys. the radial menus that you've made, they're all binded to the same hotkeys that you have, and do you have hotkeys for each option that's on that thing? Because the circular click and then click again is slower than click and hotkey.
Yeah.
So they are binded to hotkeys?
Yeah, we've been talking about a hotkey. Just have it simple.
Cool. And also one small grief. Jump cloning, I run 5 accounts. Jump cloning often is a brutal, overly time-consuming process. I'm not sure if that was intended as being a time sink or whether it's just something that got down prioritied. But that was something that annoys me pretty much every second day.
Yeah, I don't want to, comment much on like why it is that it is. That's not me who made that decision, but that question and conversation comes up very, very frequently.
Okay.
So it's very very visible in our minds when we want something because we think that this is not optimal and not functioning as we would probably like.
Yeah, and for anybody that forgot to resume their skill training after jump cloning.
That too, yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Follow-up question to the guy who was wondering about the fittings. Could we get a graphical representation of the fitting, kind of like in Dust, with the quantity of the items you have? So you would know, oh, I have so many damage controls, but I'm missing so many of these to complete 5 of these fittings. It could be used for Corp, Alliance, and for personal use. And you could probably purchase it right from the same window. And you also maybe could filter it with your all assets, system assets, and station assets.
Probably, but I can't promise because it wouldn't be on our team to do. So I can't promise, but I can always bring that up.
Hello. 2 small things. If I'm training multiple characters on one account, and one is busy training, I want to start training something else, wouldn't it be possible to just say, well, this other character is training, do you want to pause that training and just start training on this instead of having to log out?
Yeah. I don't see anything against it, but I think I would like to what are the edge cases surrounding that, if any. So I think that would need to go through just a process, but I don't see anything against it just right now.
And then the other thing that I wanted to ask is about the blinking tabs and blinking neocom. Currently, in a lot of the places, you've got the option to switch it off completely. But if I'm working on a specific tab already, I've got an active window, and I do something like maybe sell something, whatever, and it starts blinking at me, it's really irritating. I'm already working on this thing. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
If it's something I'm not working on, like I don't have a mail window open and I get a new mail, that's great to start blinking to say, oh, you've got a new mail. But if I'm already looking at the mail window and I see the mail come in, why start blinking at me?
Yeah, I mean, that's just bad, I would think. But we should just probably try to fix that.
Okay, thanks.
So with the new gate animation, will there be an animation that shows that someone lands if you're in the destination system? Like currently the gate activates.
Yeah, so currently it just, at the receiving end of the receiving, this is not really good. So at the other end, you would just pop in as you would before. But there is going to be some animation, but I don't think that's really finished, so I haven't seen it. But we want it to be a little bit more immersive, that you see if you're on the gate and people are coming in, that it should be visible and easy to understand.
2 short questions. In the new menu will be the fleet commands like warp to 50, 100?
Yeah.
Okay. And one follow-up to the question before. Can I, when I store fitting and I want to refit my ship, I would like that the items get removed from my containers. I always need to pick them from everywhere, store it in, and then fit it.
Nothing against that.
I have another question. It's about the fitting window and active tanking modules. They do not show as active when in the EHP. You had to go outside the station and activate them to see it.
Yeah.
Or use
Yeah.
fitting.
Yeah, I think we were actually talking about it just this week.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly. So it's something we definitely should fix, but I can't promise you it's going to happen in Odyssey.
All right.
Not sure if this is a thing that's been brought up in the UI department at all, but what about a possible visual point in space when you double-click to fly to a spot in space?
Yeah, so we've been prototyping a little bit, like to better see where you're going. It was brought up in the roundtable yesterday, which we had the team. So like just a vector-based, for example, so you could see like both you and others. We're experimenting with things like that, just as a prototype, but we haven't had nothing concrete yet that is actually viable as of now.
Right, no worries.
I think we have time for like 3 questions.
Okay. Hi, I've got 2 quick ones, I think, probably.
Yeah, that's fine.
Centaurix Eve Engineering. Can we have a filter on the blueprint list when we... Because, you know, when you got to go through 500 blueprints to get the thing, when you're installing a job, it's like a pain in the ass.
Yeah. I see no reason why not. I mean, the filter system in the imagery should be...
Yeah.
I should.
So, you know, in the Corp blueprint bit, when you're installing it, you got to go through everybody else's blueprint. Yeah.
I've had that problem.
And the second thing is, when I saw the Dust presentation, they had this really awesome map, which looked so much more intuitive. Can we have that?
If I can control, yes. But I can only sort of suggest, so yes, I would love it.
Thanks.
I have 2 questions. With the modular control that we currently have, we can only group weapons. First of all, need to have same ammo. Would it be possible to at least allow grouping of weapons if even they have different type of ammos, and even more preferably also be able to combine several modules, say point and weapons at the same time? Because it would be a lot easier, at least for people. We live a lot in wormholes, and we do a lot of decloaking, and then to have to sort of hit 20 models at the same time, and it's really complicated to sort of control that.
Yeah.
But because I would just like to see, like, you could put in like an extra module key that you could then customize for, say, when I hit this key, I turn up all my hardeners. So when I pitch this key, I turn on all these modules.
So sort of like a macro, or
basically a small macro, but advanced module control, because currently you need to control Shift F and sit for half an hour and click.
I'm not going to promise that we could do that. It's probably a lot more complex, and I think it's a lot more on the technical side. And I think like the grouping itself, just the technical aspect of that, is very tied to them being exactly the same. But having some sort of an easy way to sort of just do the things that you want to do, I think that's a good idea. Just start with that thought, and then sort of find out, you know, how can we maybe that's just a different topic for us as a team. Just how can we make that experience?
Because the whole module control panel isn't that optimal.
Then
that's sort of more the idea than any specific idea. It's just that the way it's controlled isn't really...
Yeah, I would definitely take it as that, you know, maybe the controls of using that is could be tweaked and loved.
The other one is a tiny little thing, but really annoying. If you have several waypoints, they all be yellow, and if you jump into a system, you'll have all yellow. It would be nice to be able to tell this is actually the gate, and please another color in yellow that we can actually see on the overview.
Absolutely. So, did you bring this up in the user experience yesterday?
I find that the more I suggest things, the likelier it will be used.
I agree. Last question.
Hi. I want to talk about assets. Is this possible? Because, you know, everyone has millions of items stuffed in containers, cargo holds, setups. Is this possible when you do search in a assets menu, or in a, that it will spit everything saying, okay, item this, and then a column saying cargo of a ship, container 1 or whatever?
I don't think there's anything that is like, I don't think it's technically not possible, but I think it just has to be weighed against everything else sort of in the greater scheme of things. But I think it's a very great idea to have being able to sort of easily find things that are in your assets. So.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that's all for me. Thank you very much.